couple of things, real quick. Anybody, a little homework review. Anybody been somewhere and seen something cool that they want to share with us? Hi, Amelia.
Hi.
Anybody seen something? I got something. You got something?
Yeah, I've been in Spain.
Oh, what'd you see then? It's cool.
Until a day and a half ago. Just a ton of walkability. People drive, but there are people always walking around in the streets to shops, to fruit shops, restaurants, bars, and it's easy for people to do it and for there to also be traffic. And the other thing that I noticed that I hadn't really thought about before is the use of, I don't even know actually if they have zoning ordinances or anything similar, but if they do, then it's certainly mixed zoning. All around in the bottom floors, because most places are flats, right?
Yeah.
So in the bottom floors, there's shops, retail, butcher shop, that kind of thing, and then you look up and it's people's houses. And it seems to work well in the sense that it seems like it really integrates the community, right? Because if you live up there and you come down, you're immediately in the city among people who live there.
Cool. Roy?
I'm just going.
By the way, y'all, Roy is on our committee now. They swapped council members on us, and we're glad to have you.
Well, thank you. But the other day I was reading an article. There was a lady that had moved to Italy, and she was making a comparison to her city. I don't want to name it, but anyway, she said one thing that she'll never buy a car again. Everything is walkability.
Yeah.
Else she could ride a bicycle, and I said I'd like to see that in Nacogdoches.
Yeah.
Well, not completely 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, I was my daughter's 50th birthday. We spent 3 weeks ago that we spent 7 days in Jamaica, but it's not. I can't compare how that works compared to here because you're locked into a resort.
Yeah.
And you only go like we went to. Of course, we did go to the rum factory and the goat farm.
That's good.
We could have one of those here.
Well, Betty, you got something? I did, Janet and I went up to visit our daughter in Colorado. We got one of these little vans. We did this, van life thing. And so I got to go to a bunch of little towns, which was the goal. All the little mountain towns are the same. It doesn't matter which one you go to. They all look exactly the same. They're all multi-use. They're flats upstairs, and one thing I noticed, they all have some kind of little grocery store downtown. Not like Kroger's, but I'm cooking and I need a lemon or some bread or something like that. And I thought, okay, we got to keep that in mind because we really don't have anything like that downtown. So I thought that's interesting. And then, as silly as it sounds, and I told y'all this one time before, we gotta be visionary. It's not all gonna happen. It can't. There's no way. At the end of the day, you got to pay for things. But let's not sell ourselves short. And I'll give you an example. We've had a discussion about how the university and downtown are not connected, which is as weird as it can be, and we all have made jokes about if Butcher Boys was still down there in the turn on Mound Street, they probably would be connected, because if you get to that turn, then you can see downtown. And I sat there and thought, and let's see, Breckenridge, we rode the gondola up to the mountain and down just to see the views, and I thought, as silly as that sounds, that's how big we got to think. Who says that someday there couldn't be a gondola that ran from the university to downtown continuously all day long? And that one in Breckenridge was free, by the way. It's just you ride it for the view. And as silly as it sounds, we got to be that big a visionary. We got to think about those kind of things, because there may be one out there that works like that. So I just wanted to share it with that. Now, one more piece of homework. We don't have everybody here, but I'm going to do it anyway. Amelia, you help me remember, I don't know how many council meetings ago it was, because I try to only go every now and then, but during one of them we were discussing about community input and things like that, and there was a council person that expressed concern that people on the committees didn't even feel like they had input. And man, I hope that's not the case. But if it is the case, I want you to speak up today, because we want to make sure we figure out how to make everybody have as much input as they possibly want. And on this committee especially, please, voice your opinion. We're not all going to want this. At the end of the day, I'm 100% sure I'm not going to get all the things I want. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that Brian sends me pictures all the time. I'm not going to get an archway over any road in town. It's just not going to happen probably. But I'm fighting for it to the bitter end. It's going to be some totem pole or something instead probably. But I'm going for it. But I want you to feel like you can say whatever you want. And that's true if you're a guest or you're on the committee. I remember part of our job is we can do meetings in the boxes, but man, we're supposed to be having coffee with community members, and sometimes it'll be something you want to express that's not really how you feel, it's something you heard and you want us to have an awareness of it. So please remember that's part of our responsibility, and don't be afraid to say anything at any point in time, because at the end of the day, we want to come out with something that's pretty powerful to dream about, of how we can make our downtown look 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and 50 years from now. So, cool? Well, moving on to the review of the committee, consultant, city staff roles. You want to start that? Or
I'm going to let Francois cover
Okay.
that. They've prepared a whole PowerPoint, and we're going to go over some of these things because there were some questions about who does what in this process, what the process looks like. So I'm going to let Francois and his team take it away. And if y'all have questions, interrupt. It's supposed to be a conversation, not a big just presentation. So please let them know.
And if you have to have coffee, you can ease back there and get it too.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, it's hard to follow Miles with enthusiasm, but he's really enthusiastic, and it's so wonderful to hear him talk and to have the team rallied up. Because after all, we are thinking big, and we want to think big for downtown, absolutely. We are very excited to be on the team, and let me just confirm our team. Flavia is from DDJ. She joined us recently, but a great support for me, of course. I need her to make this happen. Jody from Lee Engineering, looking at transportation and traffic. We have Danny from KSA Utilities, and we know the downtown has a big problem with utilities and infrastructure. Jay will look at code and regulations. To be able to achieve that, what Amira described as what she loved so much, you need the regulations and zoning written to make it possible. So that's why she's on the team. And myself, of course, Francois from DDJ, the project manager. But I noticed that someone does not have a card. But it's an empty one that you can write your name.
None of these are yours, I'm guessing.
No. Then if you write them big for us, we all see it. I appreciate that. And again, welcome to everybody that's here. I so appreciate your time taking out of the day, out of your schedule to be here. And we want to connect. I mean, in February we came down, we had a good connection, but then there was a quiet time. And so we are really excited to be here. In fact, next week we're going to be here again. We look forward to that. And there's some energy that's building up, and I don't know you start picking it up from your end, but because of our interviews that we had today, yesterday's focus group meetings, yesterday also we had an interview, and then tomorrow we're going to have more interviews, and next week we will have interviews and focus group meetings, and it will end up with a vision event. But we will also on Wednesday, of course, meet with all of you to talk a little bit about the existing conditions in downtown. And you should receive a memo shortly that will provide you insight on how we perceive the issues being. But we want to make sure we correct, and we want to be corrected if needed after you've reviewed that. So yeah, we want to talk about what is the role of every committee member, what is our role, what is the staff's role in this whole process. We want to go a little bit over the engagement schedule, so that's very clear. And then we want to hear from you about any issues, concerns about the project process, or just what lies ahead, or anything that either you have or that you've heard other people have expressed. Because we at staff want to make sure that we accommodate those concerns. Because if you don't do that, I mean, it can go rogue, and it can be very obstructive at the end of the day. We want to prevent that. We need your help in that. And then, of course, we'll talk about the next steps. So, roles and responsibilities specifically to the committee is described in the following way. And this really is how it was presented during the council meeting when the resolution was adopted to have these advisory advisory committees in place. So it talks about regular attendance. It talks about staying engaged, and you being here and participating, and how we had the event the previous time. All of that is part of it. But also then, because you are representative of the community, is to be connected to the community after all, to bring to us anything that we don't have the ability to learn or to have insight in, but use your connections, gain insight and bring to us, and make us aware of anything that we don't know about. So that is very important. Reviewing and making recommendations on the plan elements. Actually, no, this last one, but guidance and direction to staff and consulted at crucial steps in the process. So there are times, like for instance, next week, we have this existing positions memo that will soon be released to you to review, and on Wednesday, we will talk about it. And that's a target date or crucial step that has been met at that point. Reviewing and making recommendations on plan elements. We would want to have your input, of course, as part of your role. Serving as host and assisting with facilitating public events when needed. Every public event, we want the whole team to be there and to be there in the community, connect with them and make them aware of things, whether it's the on-street engagement that will happen, or whether it's the public meeting of next week, Thursday evening. We want you to be there and connect and help with that process. Recruiting hard-to-reach populations to share and obtain input. We want to make sure we hear from everyone, and we know it's hard for some people to sometimes attend a meeting. Maybe a single mother with children, and how can she do that? To accommodate that, for next week's public meeting, we could actually have a child activity area, so the parent or parents can bring the child or children to the event, have they being entertained and being active, whereas the parents can participate in the meeting. That's a way that we reach out to those communities. But again, if there are anyone that we haven't reached, we would need your help to be able to connect with them somehow. Maintaining decorum at all times. So the governance of the committee, City Council appointed all the members, chair and vice chair of each committee, and that was done. All the meetings are open to the public, and they're welcome to sit at the back and observe. A quorum is a simple majority to conduct business. Council members will serve as resources and are voting members of the committee. So in other words, if there's a council member in the group, they're part of the team. They're not at the level of a council member, really. They're really there as part of the team. Yet they've got insight and wisdom that they can share as beneficial for the process. That is what we want. Consensus is used to move forward, recommending policy or plan elements to the next level. And we have a little piece about consensus as well that council has adopted. And it's not 100% that everyone agrees. It's impossible. By human nature it's possible, but we can at least come to a point where there's general understanding that, yeah, there's a good way forward. And not all my ideas and thoughts were in there, but at least it's going forward in a good way. Final drafts are forwarded to the respective boards. So once we've got a draft of this report, it will go to the P&Z, go to the Main Street Board, for them also to review, of course. And then committees may remain to track progress of implementation of plan elements. This is really a fun part for me, Miles. This is where actually the energy that's created and the momentum that's created by this committee and the planning process is to use that to move forward, not to stop, and it's an anticlimax, and what now? We want to give you a role to help implement this plan, and council needs you, staff needs your base knowledge, your enthusiasm, the fact that you've been part of this. We're going to urge you to become part of that movement of making sure that it gets implemented. And then, of course, consensus. I mentioned it's not 100% agreement. It's achieved by facilitating collaboration within the group. In other words, last time you've seen some of that happening by the way we facilitated the process. We had those map exercises. We went around the room and asked questions, and people had to write down and then we shared. That is facilitating collaboration and participation. Open-mindedness, flexibility, and cooperation of group participants. And you know what Miles does every time he asks about homework, he really opens people's minds. And he helps people to see bigger and realize different things that they've not know about. So important to always be open-minded about that. Sorry. Then provide equal time for input into the process. And again, this is where the facilitation process allow each one to talk and share rather than anyone dominating the conversation. That will be a tragedy. Listening, seeking input from others and participation from all. Meaning that you want to ask someone, well, what do you think? It may be different from my thoughts, but maybe I can learn from that. So you help each one to share and talk and be part of the process. Seeking a commitment to implementing and supporting the group's decision. In other words, once you've come to a decision or say, yeah, this is how we need to move forward, if there are situations where it's opposed, but it's not from a base of understanding, but just for the sake of opposing, we're going to ask you to help make the point that no, it has to move forward because, and you have the answer to the because, and you must help sell the idea. So even when we go to council to get this plan adopted, you will become the champions of making sure that it gets adopted. So at this point, I'm going to ask, from what I've shared right now, any questions on your side, any uncertainty, or just wanting to know more, perhaps, about what I just shared? I mean,
To make sure, yeah, thank
Yes.
you. It's going back to the community engagement piece and hard to reach populations.
yes.
I certainly understand the role of both committees to serve as kind of a connection point to other community members, maybe that you guys might not know how to reach or don't have those
Sure.
inroads. My concern is with both committees' limitations in that. I think we're really looking at, let's say, talking about in particular the Hispanic community in Nacogdoches, or the immigrant community in Nacogdoches. I think that on this committee we're really lucky to have Evelyn and Mario because they have made inroads already in the Hispanic community and are trusted people. However, the Hispanic population, at least from the city side, has been notoriously hard to reach. I'm an immigration lawyer in town, and when people ask me how do we get to them, I say, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's really hard. And so one of the things that impressed me most about you guys is the community engagement piece. I was really impressed with the level of expertise there. And like I said, while I understand our role to provide connections to you guys, I'm also concerned. I guess what I want to ask for, or see if it's possible, is I think we need to lean on your expertise in community engagement. I mean, the community engagement consultant, that is what they do, right? And so I would hope that there would be a marriage between those things, between the committee's ability to connect to the community, but also you guys' expertise. And I would like to hear about how that plays out.
Absolutely, love to share that. When we did the persona mural, which is where we identified potential connections or names or people that should be reached out, and we had categories, remember? And we had those little, sticky notes that we add the names and information. That's the best we could come up till now, and that's what we use to reach out, of course. Now, as we do our surveys, as we do our engagement, we will come to a point in our engagement where we will ask ourselves, of that list, who haven't been reached yet? Who hasn't come to meetings? Even though we reach out to them, but there's no response, there's something we have to do about this. So there will be a time when we will identify those that we just haven't heard from. And then we will consider about how can we then reach out to them. And that time is really a time when we lean heavily on you and we will come up with suggestions. Do you use the where people worship, go to church? Is that what you can use as a venue? Is it an issue? And I hope that the fact that we have children activity next week, Thursday, will bring more people out that would not have come because they needed to have child being taken care of. So we will come up with suggestions, but at the same time, because you are part of the community and know the community, we will really lean on you and you will lean on us. It will be a collaboration to try to really reach those communities that we just don't. Yesterday, for instance, I came to mind and realized that there's so many immigration communities here. I would love to see how we can reach out to them. Now, we have our translation in Hispanic, or Spanish then, but I don't think it's practical probably to do it in all the possible languages that are out there. Is there another way? And then Jay made a point, that often the children of those immigrants, they go to school, they learn English, and they can become the conduit to their parents. And we can find a way to reach them that way. So we will together find solutions, but after we've identified whoever we make.
I think there is a specific step in the process, Francois, that.
Yeah, as I go through the next few slides, you will see that. But I'm glad you ask it now, because obviously I want to also be aware of something that's up front, an issue or concern, address it, and then you will see how we propose it. Yes?
Hi, I'm
Evelyn.
Evelyn. Just a segue to what Amelia was sharing. I do work also with the Hispanic community and the ones that, all those populations. And I'm glad that you mentioned, because it was like an aha moment when you said, well, there's some steps that we have already taken, like, to reach out those difficult communities. And I remember going back and kind of feeling and adding some names on those columns, because those are the people that I know. The only difference is that the people that I put in those pages, the Hispanic community or members that I know, do have a profession and do have an email and do have a way to respond, or even like if emails are being sent to them, they have their phone, they're checking. But I'm gonna say, if I'm thinking about the population that we're not reaching out, those names probably is just 5% of the Hispanic population. Because I know we're not gonna put someone that still are having difficult creating an email account. And even though it sounds like, wait a minute, everybody should have an email account, right?
Yeah.
But that's the reality, that a lot of people were helping to create an email account because back in their countries it was not a need. But then creating a solution, I think I have found really good ways to actually reach out the community, because learning from the pandemic, letters, phone calls, websites, apps are not effective. However, like social media, that's, at least for me, has been the thing that has reached this community. So I will be glad to help, or there's any questions, or even having meetings where, and like you said, you mentioned something about the kids. I was just looking at that picture. Dia de los Muertos, my goodness. I mean, that has bring the community, and there's something that everybody loves. So there's a lot of ways.
During their events, when they come together, and to be there.
Yes, yes.
Now that you spoke about that, you reach out to those with social media. And I agree with you that when you don't have internet necessarily, but would you agree that probably 95% of those that are hard to reach have cell phones?
Yes, and that's why the reason why it is so important once again. But even like difference from written social media rather than a video. I'm gonna give you an example. I work for NIC. I can post something like, information, come to this meeting. Nobody would see it. Sometimes they don't have time, but I can post a video and say, hey, we're gonna have this today. My goodness, it goes from like 10 views to like 2,000. So, and that is what has worked in this particular community with the particular. So there's ways, and I'll be
I'd
happy
love
to
to
help.
hear that, Evelyn, and in fact, I wish our public engagement specialist was unable to attend today, because this is a meeting that we didn't plan on, but we wanted to connect with you, so that's why we accommodated this meeting, but they couldn't make it because of their schedule. But I wanted you to hear that, because I can already imagine that what he will do is to say through staff, say to you, Evelyn, can you invite on your video the people to come to something or for something, and then we'll post it, and it'll be on the website, and then you can actually send it with your, or they also through their applications that they have available, to all the cell phone numbers that you provide to him, and he can send it and blast it out.
That would be great.
I'm excited to hear that, because I think it's really a good way to reach them. That's good. Yeah. Yes?
As far as being able to communicate in certain neighborhoods, especially minority neighborhoods, it's a past generation issue, mainly because for generations they've been excluded in any decision making, and I'm going to reference Nacogdoches as far as Nacogdoches is concerned. And then when there was opportunity to have spokesmen from that community, it was not always a spokesman that was in touch with the people. That was a person that the outside communities knew, so they would appoint that person even though that person may not have been in touch with the community. And that's, he had name recognition or she had name recognition is really
Right,
how the person
right.
was chosen. But it's going to be difficult to reach out. Now, like you mentioned, cell phones, but communication between minorities in my community is between the churches. And if you can get close to the pastors and ministerial alliance group, then you can communicate with the majority of citizens.
Absolutely. That's good to know. You know, you mentioned the name recognition. There's two ways. You know, in the past what happened is the name recognition for the outside, not part of that minority community, made them the conduit, but what they should find out who are those name recognition people within the community. Those are the people that should be connected with. And you know, I hope
Well, they thought they was doing us a favor by picking, choosing the person that was name recognition spread it across the city
Right.
versus within the neighborhood.
so. Let me ask you this, Roy. Have all those names that will have name recognition in the community, are they on that persona mural?
Not all.
They need to be there. So I urge you, and that's the beauty of this mural. It's a living thing. It grows and it becomes bigger and more as we learn more like now. And now we urge you, please. And have anyone of you have all of you added some names on that mural at any point in time that you can recall? So you're familiar? Have you, Evelyn? Have you,
I
Sam?
have.
You have Sam? Have you?
No.
Roy, have you? Roy, sorry, have you added?
Yes.
Other names?
Yeah.
You have, Roy?
Yes.
Have you, John? Have you? You have? So, I urge everyone who have not, hey, even just to familiarize yourself with it. It's fun. It is fun because it's actually it's a very easy application. And I apologize if I called you out, but I wanted to make the point that I want you to be out there and be part of the process. And I am sometimes, I feel, you know, I'm of the generation that grew up with all of this. I am sometimes intimidated, so I need people to help me to, you know, go on those sites. I challenge you and I urge you, just look at it and see if you add something, you know, how you do it, and if you have trouble in being able to do it, let someone help you do that. Because that makes you part of that process of making sure you reach out. Yes,
I have two questions.
yes.
Oh, I was just gonna mention real fast, and I'll resend out the link to the persona spreadsheet that he's talking about. And if y'all don't wanna go on there and add it, you can email your contacts to me and I'll put them on there for you.
One of my questions.
Okay, there.
Yeah. My second question is, many of us have had our group meetings in the community.
There's meeting in the box.
In the box.
Yes, yes.
Has anyone reviewed those comments we've sent back and given to us back, and the ones they are in favor of and the ones they're against? I think the committee needs to see that.
You know, as a
Have they
consultant
been
team,
reviewed by anybody?
we as a consultant team definitely will do that as part of the process.
Right, but if we could see the list from all the meetings of what the people want and what they'd like to not have, I think it would be important to this committee to see that.
You know, that's an interesting
Because
point.
we've pulled the community
Right.
together through those meetings, probably
Yeah.
hundreds of people. So I think it's good for this committee to see that. We need to see the results from that.
I agree with you. Now, I think what's very important, and I think it's not there yet, but it will be there soon, is to make a note of every meeting that's took place. And the detail of it, we can talk what is appropriate at that forum. But we want to see photos of that we take, which you guys were urged to take some photos. We want to add that where people can see the excitement that was built around these meetings. And then, in terms of the results, we have to be, and I don't want to comment right now because I just don't know what is the appropriate thing, at what point do you share with whom. I think it's good for this committee to know everything that's said and shared.
Yes.
But does it go out in the larger public arena? I don't know yet.
Well, I was just asking for the committee. I mean, I don't
I
know
agree.
where it
The
goes, but I
committee should.
think the committee needs to hear.
I agree, I
Yeah,
would love for them to see
because I
that.
think some of that's gonna be, some groups that had those meetings privately may not wanna say like, this Bible study said they hated this group or part of town or whatever, but I do think we can do some sort of summary where it's like, here are some of the general ideas that came out of it and not attribute it to
I
this
don't know
group.
that I need to know where it came from, but I
Yeah.
think just the pros and the cons. I mean, I don't
Exactly.
think we have to know
Even
which
that's a good
group
point.
wanted what.
And sometimes we do that, you know, for instance, we will have interviews with individuals, we ask them to be candid about sharing with us. And we tell them, we're never going to say that you said that when we interviewed you.
Sure, I don't mean to
Exactly.
identify who said that, or
I-
even which group it came from, but I think it's important for us to know where we are with the community on that.
I think it's an excellent idea, I really like that, and we will definitely make sure we push that. So-
One thing, I've done a couple of meeting box, and I like to look at it as I've captured community ideas and
Yes,
vision,
yes.
rather than for and against. So just putting that energy out, that it's not who's for
I
or
agree with
against,
that, yeah.
but I'm capturing their ideas, and I'm just checking in with them as we're sharing ideas. And that helps drive that process of visioning versus for and against.
And you
Well,
know-
I agree, but I think we definitely, if there's things that people do not want, I think like the convenience store that Miles mentioned earlier, that had been brought up in our meeting, that as many people are living downtown now and more wanting to move downtown, a convenience store would be necessary, you know.
Absolutely.
Maybe when we tear the bank down to move the old stone fort back there, we can.
Oh, we don't have all day now, Miles. I do know where they wanna move it.
I do
was
too.
told that the other day.
I think
went to
Amelia's
the
got
office.
something.
Yeah.
They wanted to put it back
Before,
on
when
the
you,
ready.
just before, Jay, let's remember to, you know, for our meeting on Thursday, we want to do a large big community meeting. This source of information that was created is already a good source to build from.
Right.
So let's keep that in
And
mind.
also the downtown, charrette next.
Yes,
door.
all of that is so valuable.
I want to go, Amelia, before I let you go, the part of being on this committee, like what Evelyn was saying, what Roy was saying, you are the people that can get those names. And I think that's part of the responsibility of all of us. And it's easy to categorize it by particular minority communities that are hard to get to, and you're gonna have a better way to get to those names that we need. But it's everyone. I mean, the name I put on the list was somebody that caught me after a Rotary meeting and just ripped me about how stupid everything was, and just, I mean, it was an earful. And I thought, that's exactly a person I want to be able to be asked to sit down and share their opinion. You know, it's naysayers too. It's not just particular community groups. It's somebody that's passionate, positive, and even passionate, negative, because you got to get their opinions. You know, and I think that really ultimately makes us get better answers.
And I want to go back to.
I'm gonna get you the chance.
It's okay, go ahead.
Evelyn, you said that you did not add the names because you can't reach them. Well, what I want you
I
to do.
did, actually, what I said is that I add a lot of names. However, the names that I added is people that I know, Hispanic community members, who actually have an email that can respond, that can actually follow up, whether in English or Spanish. What I was trying to say is that that is just probably 5% of the Hispanic community here in Nacogdoches, not that 95% who might not be able, either because of job schedules or things like that, be able to attend. Which actually kind of leads me to another question. So sorry. Is there any way that, for example, every time I need to share information and even get feedback thinking about social media, it's very hard for our Hispanic community because they have schedules that or work jobs that do not even allow them to go to a teacher meeting during the day. Is there a way that I can kind of have a meeting like on Facebook, because even part of my job is to have that parent-family community engagement, and this is a great opportunity even for the district. Is there a way that I can do that like on Facebook, but then having like a way where they can privately share their thoughts and opinions, like having like a group, but not everybody will be able to attend at that particular time, that particular day. So
What I
don't know.
suggest, I want us to have a discussion of that
Okay.
afterwards, maybe
Right.
standing off and see what possibilities there may be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But the only thing what I want to point out is that don't hold back and put names, even if you know we can't reach them. But you make a note, hard to reach or special attempt must be made to follow, to connect with these people. They're leaders in the community, but you know it's hard to reach them. Don't make that, not put their names on there.
Oh.
So, sorry.
No, actually, that was all really good because my comment has to do with what everybody just said. A couple of weeks after you guys had set up the mural page and we had some time to add names, we had, I don't know if the comp plan committee did this, but we had a meeting where we discussed names that were on and what's missing, and it was really helpful because to do it as sort of like a group discussion exercise, because we were brainstorming who could go here, who's missing here. And so in that vein, I think two things. One, it might be helpful to do something like that again in one of our future meetings. And likewise, you mentioned earlier that you guys were going to start trying to reach out to the people on that mural, and that then you would identify, okay, who's not responding, who's not showing up. It would be helpful for us to get that once you guys have done that analysis, to get that feedback from you guys, so that then maybe we can have another brainstorming session on,
Absolutely.
Okay, this particular person isn't answering, how do we get to them?
And that, you will see in the next number of slides, there is a phase in the engagement process where exactly that is done.
Great.
I mean, all that the equitable, equity, equitable, is the right word, term, but maybe really want to be equitable in the community, make sure that everyone gets reached.
Right.
It's late in the game, but as I'm looking around, and my son's gonna kill me at this point, but there is no young person. I mean, Brandy's probably one that's got children, but how old's Mom?
She's an SFA student.
Okay, okay, I was going, there's not a young representative. And it's a hard group to meet, but those young kids that are still coming into the community that will be here past our time,
Right.
you know,
I agree.
think that's missing
Yeah.
on the things that I've seen so far.
Susie, you've hurt my feelings there, because
I know, but your hair color changed. Your, otherwise, I would have never known.
Well, and other than the student population, I want to make sure there's a way, and the comprehensive plan will talk to that. How can we keep the young people here and not wanting to leave? And not necessarily people that come to study from outside and leave again, but people that are from the community. How can you keep those to stay? How can there be job opportunities for them?
Right.
That's what we need. Now, it would be great to have that demographic was it's like between 18 and 22, I would say, between 18 and 24. If we have some of them somehow engaged, whether they represent a committee like this or not, but I think we must hear from them.
Right.
And again, our names like that we can talk to.
we need to add the key club.
Some of us are real.
School.
And one thing to go back to what Amelia said, I mean, because we've done 2 focus groups yesterday based on some of the names y'all gave us for economics and neighborhoods. I just went totally blank on the second one. And so we can send out kind of, here's our next couple focus group topics. And if there's anybody else that it all of a sudden comes up that, oh my gosh, I forgot to add this person to transportation. So we can send that back out, and then if we need to, we can do additional brainstormings with our groups, especially if we're just coming up with names that, here's our next 6 focus groups. Who else can you think of that have changed jobs or new people that have come onto the scene since we did this, months ago? So that we can absolutely do that.
Well, and I think, Roy, you're right, we don't have the exact right names on that list yet, but we put a tree together. We said, okay, contact the concerned black men, and they ought to be able to take us to the next step and to the next step. We don't have all the right Hispanic minorities, but we said, let's get with the Catholic Church, and take those steps. Well, I think you're right, Amelia, a little brainstorming every now and then is a good idea, because that 18 to 22-year-old is easy to get to. It's a lot easier to get to because you go to the Key Club or, some organization at the high school, or and say we need some people to participate. And so, and ultimately that gets us to the right individuals. And I think we hadn't thought about going to high school organizations. I just leaned over and told Jessica we need to put a couple of those high school organizations down, RILA, Rotaract, or Key Club, or, the drill team, or whatever. It doesn't matter, I think we can get to some of those people.
Anything else before I go to the next slide? Yes.
Well, I just wanted, Suzanne, to your point about the age range, we're an older population here. So I think really targeting the 34 to 54, because those people are also the ones we want to attract, and they tend to leave if the job leaves town.
Right.
So we're an older, I think the median age here is 66, something like that.
Well, thank you for confirming that as well. Good, yes?
One more
Yes.
super quick thing. What time are the focus group meetings?
So we had 2 yesterday, and one was at, oh my gosh, it was a very long day. One was at 3 o'clock and one was at noon.
Okay. Those times are really difficult for people, for
Okay.
working people.
Okay.
And so I wanna suggest, maybe having flexibility in terms of evening meetings.
Okay.
Because all the populations that we're talking about,
Mhm.
if you ask a Hispanic community member to show up at 12 or 3, they're not gonna show up. They
Yeah,
can't.
and I don't think that's a time that's set for like every focus
Yeah,
group
yeah,
is gonna be
yeah.
at this, so I think each one will be flexible, but we may have some people where it's like, sure, I can come in the middle of the day because I'm doing this as part of my job, you know, participating in this focus group because I'm talking about business in Nacogdoches or something like that. So
Right.
I definitely think we can change some of the times and do evening ones, especially to accommodate some of those different groups where it's like, we can only come at night.
Ooh. Thinking
Are
about the
those
employer.
Posted so we know when they're meeting.
We haven't right now just because we wanted this certain group to talk, but we can if you'd like to come and observe.
On the employer thing, we have some big employers that the city has good communication and connection with. Like I'm thinking Pilgrims, for example, like a big employer of immigrant community members. And it's not just Pilgrims, there are others. And given how big they are, I mean, we have stuff with Pilgrims come up all the time in council meetings, in terms of approving this grant or this or that. And so the city staff already has made those connections and has those relationships. I'm wondering if there's a way that we can reach out to the employer themselves, particularly employers that employ hard to reach populations, and have it as, you could, when you said as part of the job, it made me think, wait, what if we were able to somehow get the employer themselves involved in terms of trying to get employee input? Then having a meeting at 12 in the lunchroom at Pilgrims is a doable thing.
Yeah, and that's something that actually got brought up by the comp plan
Oh,
committee yesterday
okay.
too, so I think we're all kind of thinking in the same
Awesome.
vein, which is good. So
Good.
yeah, sorry Francois, we didn't mean to hijack your stuff.
So, let's then talk about the engagement schedule, and I just want you to read with me.
And this is in your packet.
No. But
Yeah.
practice manager, we don't need to read that.
It's in your packet.
But, and I want to focus on here because that just shows all the activities involved in engagement. It's a long list of things we're going to do. So the first phase is what we now come to an end. We had the tour, we had the branding done, and we launched the website. So phase 1 has been done. Now we are going into phase 2. So what does it consist of? Well, there's a number of things. You know, we have launched the meeting in a box. We have and we will have a total of eventually focus groups of 16 total of 15 interviews. We will have 5 online surveys. The first one has been now released, number 1. We will have then also one-off questions as follow-up, because sometimes you hear something on this, or you learn something in the survey, and you want to know a little bit more. So then there will be follow-up questions for that, like individual questions. We have the 2-day events for both the comprehensive plan and the downtown plan. The comprehensive plan 2-day event is next week, and then the downtown 2-day event will be in September, 21-22 September. And then, of course, public meetings are part of those 2-day events. Again, next week, Thursday, will be the first public meeting. Then there will be 2 public meetings for both the comp plan and downtown plan to share with the community what we've learned, what have we found, and have we missed something, kind of thing. Now, of course, there's some additional activities mentioned here, which means that there's the workshop by the Main Street board, there's the volunteers, there's the SMA interns, all of those become part of the process. So there's a lot of people that are reached this way. Now, this phase is the one that we really spoke about quite a bit now, and that's the equitable engagement, meaning that those that we haven't heard from, how can we learn from them, and we want to reach out to them. So already there is the, I mentioned that we will reach out to those we haven't learned from yet, but then also these are the on-the-street engagement. We'll be in the community with those events. We've already identified an SFA, reaching out the downtown area, and the public event as one of the festivals. Then we also have the online survey to collect public comments on the community vision. As we establish or facilitate that vision, we will ask comments. There will be some youth activities at the public events, for instance next week, Thursday again, so that the parent with the children can come as well. Now this is all to make sure that those that are difficult to reach can be reached. Then we go to the final phase, and that's really when we collect public comment on the draft report, and finally there's a wrap-up public meeting to share the results of this plan with everyone. So that is the full range of engagement. Any questions about this other than what we just discussed? If not, then I'm going to go to the next part of our discussion. And this is what we said in the beginning. We want to hear about comments that people make, questions that are asked, informed or not informed, justifiable or not justifiable. We want to hear about that so that us as consultants, as well as staff, can be well positioned to answer those questions. And if there are untruths around, that must be cleared up. So right now we want to do that. So I'm going to ask you, you have some cards in front of you. You should have pens, yes. And if you can write down the top, say, 5 or 6 or so, what you've heard, or what, even your own concern, just write it down. Whether it's the process, or whether it's about the plan, or whether it's about how we're going to address something, or you've heard people say this is the, what already has been done, or write down everything that you know about, that you know is a concern or a question. Again, either you or from the community. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that, and then we will all share and talk about that.
Seen this group before.
Maybe another minute or so.
These are great.
I know, I thought we'd like these, Charlotte gives me these every day for Wayne's World. My friends will mention they use more pens. I was like, I have a million pens.
Okay. Need a few more
that screen, you got a battle going on. Every time you go by, you get hit or whacked or.
And the thing about that screen, it's convenient because it's in the middle, but then we install our new tech equipment and it falls behind it. So we have to up and down it or just duck under it every time.
So, we're going to start with, shall I start? You start with, sit down. No, okay. And, Mario, you're ready to start.
Oh, my list is long.
And only give me the top one, remember. You don't need to go through the list, you just go to the top one.
I have made the comment in the community that everyone deserves good design and a safe and interesting place to live. And you would not believe how that has created rancor. Because maybe not everyone is either informed about that or shares that same belief within our process.
This is a positive thing, Mario, I love that. So thank you for sharing it with us. And I think I also want to use that as a quote to be aware of, to say, share, and even on our website, on our website, if you want to read that from this committee, that this came out as an idea to think about this. I love it. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Roy, first on your list.
Can I, number 2?
Oh yeah, please. And by the way, if someone has already mentioned your item that you have on your list, you go to the next one.
Well, it's part of a twofold on 1 and 2, is that when there's input from the community, certain communities, no one listens, and that's due to the part that, like when I first come into city council, we would hold like breakfasts once every quarter with part of the city.
Excuse me.
Yep, part of the city, and I don't want to call it a certain group, but they broke off those breakfasts. I mean, it was just casual breakfast, and because they were saying, okay, y'all are complaining. You don't want to communicate. You're complaining, so they don't want to be part of that. Someone was not listening. Either we were not listening, or they were not listening.
Has that been part of the process now, or is it something that happened with other situations, other events?
We're still living with part of that.
Okay.
Mainly because the majority of people that started this is still around, you know, the elderly that had lived in the past,
So what you share with us is really amongst the community that came to the perception, yes, you asked us our opinion, but you don't really want to have our opinion.
Exactly.
So sincerity
Yeah.
is questioned.
Yeah.
That is what it is. Thank you for sharing. Amelia.
I think that unless you are involved in the process or have some sort of experience in what city planning is, if you see an online survey link and it says participate in the comprehensive plan, you're gonna be, I don't know what a plan is and I don't care, so I'm not gonna take the time to do it. And so I think that one concern is educating the community at large on what city planning is and the importance of it, because I think that that in and of itself might foster engagement. Because people that I've talked to, when the comprehensive plan or the downtown master planning for what is it?
There are two things that come from this for me, Amelia. The one is, I know that staff is talking about some education sessions that can be held, whether we learn from other communities with similar situations, but that the population in general can be educated about planning. So not something you are working on that.
Yes.
You want to talk to that?
Yeah, so that was brought up at a council meeting where we need education on planning and zoning and housing and what that means, and it's also helpful to have those outside experts come in. So on the staff side, we're working on putting together a panel all about planning, zoning, housing, but then also what comprehensive planning is, what long-term master plans look like, how they benefit your community, and then some more specialized topics like what is a Main Street district, how does it benefit historic preservation, things like that included. Are those topics we hear over and over that some people are upset about, but some of those concerns could easily be, kind of gotten rid of if we have some more education that goes along with it. So from the staff side, we are working on that, and that should be coming in here fairly soon.
And the other part of it is how you message or announce something like a survey. Because you say,
Right.
you're invited to participate in
Right.
the comprehensive plan. Oh, I know nothing about that, I'm not gonna do that. But if you say, participate in establishing a vision for the future.
Well,
That's it.
shape the city.
Yeah, well, share how you want to shape the city. That makes people maybe connect with that, because, I mean, we don't do that. Yeah, I can be part of that. So it's a good comment in terms of how we can respond, and I think we can do something about that. Thank you. Evelyn, top one on your list.
Intentional, careful, strategic inclusion and consideration of minorities to provide a voice. And when I'm talking about minorities, it's just not about language. It's African American and is Hispanic, but not only to that, because I think at the same time we need to all be aware, like in the district, there's like 25 spoken languages here in town. So there's other groups, but it has to be intentional, careful, strategic.
And that is a
inclusion.
concern that you express, because you want to make sure that it is taking place.
Not necessarily. This is just the same. Just having conversations with parents, community members, communities that probably even myself sometimes didn't know existed here in town, and it's hearing the conversation and even sharing this information. The language used sometimes, or the intention sometimes. The education is part.
Let me
of
ask
that.
you this, Evelyn, do you feel what we shared this morning, does that adequately address it for you, so you can tell other people about it? Yes, they are doing it. If they someone say, hey, this guy's not, they have no intent to talk about it. And do you feel confident that you can tell them, oh no, I'm part of the process and I've learned what they're going to do, so we will all be reached. Do you feel confident you can share that with
Oh yes, I mean I can share, and I have been sharing that. It is just that once again it has to be very intentional, careful.
Exactly, and I appreciate you being there in the context to help people. So that,
Mine's pretty much, people say, I wish, and then there's the stall. They don't really know what they want. They need an idea presented so they can either get excited about it or not, but it's just, they don't want to jump out there and get heard, I guess. Or they don't want to do anything once they, okay, well, I wish we had a park down there. You take care of it. You know, there's just no.
Well, they share that they wish they was the park.
Well, they didn't get that far. I'm going, you wish,
And they still don't share
They
what
don't know what they want. They
Francois,
just aren't happy where they are.
can I kind of piggyback on that one? Because I think the community can tell you what they don't want, but,
Isn't that what they want?
but they can't tell you what they want, and I can tell you, it could be a lack of exemplars. And I think people really want to see some examples and exemplars of good design of a working community like in Spain or
Yeah,
Italy.
agreed.
And can I piggyback on that too? And this is a dynamic we will have to deal with. There are two communities here in Nacogdoches. There is very shallow labels. There's a young group that wants it to change and be different and be more like something else. And there's an old group that says, we don't want new people coming to this town. We like it the way it is and we want to keep it that way. It's two different communities that we're going to have to speak to in a way that there's some kind of consensus that both of them go, oh, now I could probably go for that idea, And I think that's going to be a challenge, especially when you're talking about messing with their downtown. All the young people wish there was every third building was a bar and some good music going on, and the old people say, well, if that happens, I can't ever find a dang parking place. And so I think that's going to be a dynamic that we have to deal with. Those are.
But there's an element of, if there are no examples for people to know that there are better options, how would they be able to tell you what they wish they don't know?
What I've experienced is when they see an exemplar, they have aha moments and they actually want more. They want better for their community.
Exactly.
We're just not showing it to them yet.
We're very fortunate that there's a beautiful new park, it's about 5 years now, in downtown. And in the smaller communities, they all reference that example as what they want in their town. And that's the type of thing, you need examples in other communities that you can point to, but people go to in the area.
But most of these people don't leave Nacogdoches, so they don't know what's out there. That's
Exactly.
But then that's
it's fortunate that the media now, and you're exactly right, because even in my neighborhood, the majority of people, they've been to Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Houston area, but they haven't been to, say, city sides of Nacogdoches that have walkability, downtown that's vibrant. They don't know what to ask for.
Exactly.
And I mean, they're attached to the media, but they don't look for stuff like that on the media.
Exactly. I just saw it and go.
I totally agree with everything that was just said. I think, people, a lot of people have no idea what they want. I mean, I'm in this kind of business too
Right,
as an
right.
architect, and occasionally you get people that know exactly what they want, and it makes it easy, but sometimes people have no idea, and you gotta come up with a few options. And I'm hoping maybe we could come up with some conceptual, very loose, schematic, conceptual options, because people need something to respond to.
By the way, Dean, when I'm a landscape architect, I understand exactly what you as an architect have to deal with when you try to design something for a client. And I've learned our job as architects, landscape architects, are really to ask questions.
Yeah.
And you have to ask the right questions to be able to extract.
If your clients feel like it's all up to them, they get nervous, they
Exactly.
they
That's
feel
really what.
pressure.
That's
So
really
I
what.
think to alleviate some of that,
Yes.
you know, head scratching that people are feeling, they need to see something.
Or even the surveys that
Even
we
if
do.
it's very, very loose,
Yeah.
and you say, okay, which direction should we go?
Right,
People
like
seem to
ARC.
like this direction, so then you develop that a little bit more, and so on. But
Absolutely.
I think it's.
Good comment. I appreciate that. And Sam, do I say Brent, Sam?
Yep. I don't really have any input at this point.
No problem for you.
He's supposed to be sitting back there.
Oh,
There was
okay.
just an empty seat here.
No worry. But you have a demographic we want to hear more of. I don't want to judge your, or try to work out your age, but we want to hear from all the demographics. So if there's anything comes to mind, feel free to share, please. Laura, the first one on your list.
That's what I had.
And the second one.
What-
But that was kind of, I like that there's kind of a comment on that as well. So what is the second one on your list?
Well, I mean, I basically said we need more conceptual, visual, tangible options, discussion starters. The talking about ideas, I think, are just too fuzzy.
Right.
Something
Right.
more
Concrete,
concrete,
yes,
so that people
yes.
can, basically, something that takes all the pieces of the puzzle together, because there are so many facets in this, overall design. And people can't comprehend it until
Yes.
they have something that says, oh, that's what you're talking about.
We wish that everyone in town can spend some time with Miles, where Miles tell them, hey, let's all share what you see recently. Bailey, what is the first one on your list?
Well, mine was questions that people have just asked me. I thought that's
Yes.
what you wanted. Downtown people, I know almost every downtown merchant downtown, they're concerned about parking, and I told them at one of our last group meetings that we identified parking in downtown, and there is ample parking. And I had suggested that when we identify all the different parking areas, we give that to the merchants so they can share it with their customers. Because when you really think about it and identify all the parking, there is parking downtown. I had one ask me,
Before you go to the next point, you want to go to the top one of everyone. If you don't mind, I'm sorry.
oh, that's okay.
So, John, what's the first one on your list?
I started out like Sam with no opinion that I needed to state, but kind of listen to everything that's being said here. The simple thing is, what we're talking about is either a 30-second statement or 2 or 3 weeks of hanging around town and seeing everything and learning about the complexity of a town this small. The second item would be somewhat the same thing, and that is people respond better. Well, they respond with one of two things: a complaint that is specific and important to them, or they will respond to whatever is put before them as an exemplar. Think it's great, think it's terrible, lukewarm.
They respond to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
precede everything else. Because you have to put some of the ideas out there. You have to have people who work in a small group to create the ideas and put them out, not saying this is what we're going to do, because that begins to sound like what people are used to hearing. Is we've already thought about this, discussed it, and this is what we're going to do. Sort of a mixture.
Is that another point? Is that another point? Was this the follow-up on the previous point?
A mixture of a Socratic method, which is pretty direct, and the old Southern approach of sit down and talk about it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Will work.
Wow.
And we're supposed to be deriving some sort of substantive thing by the time we're through with this.
Right. So what I've learned from you, John, I'm sorry I'm cutting you off, but I've learned so much and I want to capture it, I don't want to lose it.
Sure.
The first one that you mentioned was the fact that we must make sure, or we must understand that some people, what you should do, you should spend 3 weeks in your town and learn about the complexity. But then you get people that use 2 seconds or 3 seconds to make a comment with no knowledge. I think that's what I heard you say.
Yep.
That's a dangerous situation or an unfortunate situation because that's not based on substance.
Yep.
And then your discussion then became really about substance that needs to be in place so people can really respond to that.
If we go ask them what they think, what are we going to get? Not much of a response. If you put forth an idea, it comes back to a thing that I, speaking like an old person, I have put forth to my kids, much to their displeasure when they were young, and that is, don't tell me what you don't want, tell me what you'd rather have.
And I think it was also mentioned
Now,
by
that's directed to kids. You don't want to say, don't tell me what you don't want. But it's, I hear what you're saying, I'm listening to you. You have a point. But how do we get there? What would you rather have as an alternative? What you're concerned about?
Exactly.
That kind of approach is not what we have been doing here. We've been talking about the process of reaching out. We haven't talked about what are you going to say to them when you reach them.
No, I must just to correct the perception as well from that point of view. You know, the way that this process has ran is very different from how we've ever done a comprehensive plan or a downtown master plan. Due to various factors, you as a committee, as well as the CPAC, have met even before the project started, and then the project started, and then you continued with meetings. We saw you once, never again, but you continued to have meetings and talk, which created expectation, it created impatience, it created things need to move forward. But the reality is that the schedule is much slower and has in fact extended because we would have already done the 2-day events about 2 months earlier according to the first schedule. But because of the summer we had to push it out. So what happened then, because you met without us, we never heard the things that come up that you're sharing out today. That's why we are here today. You felt things need to be already further. Because the point I try to make, John, is also that these ideas will come later in the phases of this project, closer to the time when we have ideas to share and ask people's comments. But right now we don't have ideas, because we can't come up with ideas until we've heard about the community's values, in what is important to them, because we can again react to that. So, and that's something, if someone say to you, you know, they just talk process, they don't do anything, haven't done anything, it's because of the stage in the planning process.
Yeah.
So, but thank you, John, for sharing. I'll come back to you for any of your other points. No, I will.
Just, well, on those surveys or questionnaires or any of that, I think once everybody started talking about the visual, show them 2 pictures. Do you want to go this direction? You know, whether it's the downtown eating areas where you have closed off the street. People can't, if they've never seen it, They have
You
no
can't
vision
ask
of
about
what
it. I
that,
agree. No, I agree with you.
you know,
Absolutely.
the
That's
park,
so true.
the
Yeah.
park setting, the lighting in the
Yeah.
alley. Why do I wanna go in the alley? You know, I mean,
Exactly.
they can't get there
They
from
can't
the
visualize, they
word.
can't visualize it on their own.
If they haven't seen it,
That's a good point.
they're just going, I don't wanna walk a lit up alley. Well, no, it's gonna be ambiance.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
And that confirms
Yeah.
John's point as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Marie, you?
Second one.
Or do you want to comment on that? Okay, the second one.
Okay, I'm going to go negative now.
That's okay.
It's not all flowers and puppies. One of the things that have come up is the materials in the library that go along with the project. They were provided by
By donation.
By donation?
By a former council member, yes.
Okay.
Did a donation, and then we purchased the books and put them in the library.
they've been mislabeled liberal propaganda. And I've read 3 of them over the summer. I think they're appropriate. They're technical.
And we need to know that. And so people label that as liberal propagation.
Propaganda, yes.
That's a serious thing. And, you know, at some point we have to ask, well, how do we address these?
This came up yesterday, remember, because I think the concern was that we were recommending to get rid of single-family zoning and somehow everything is going to be higher density apartments, and the response that we had yesterday was that a lot of these books are looking to address the housing challenges that many of the big cities have, like in California, New York, and even Austin. So a lot of them the books are written with that bias, and we know that Navajo just has different issues, and we're cognizant of how to kind of.
But the question is, if that ideas and perception are running around, how do you stop that?
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna piggyback on that because I didn't get to give my first thing. It's okay, you know, just, you know, loser miles here, but, you know, just being honest, we've talked about, you know, barriers like Roy said, how do we get to the real people that give the input? I'm telling you, in the easily recognizable classes of people that we would go to, we have a barrier of engagement there also. And I'll give you some examples, and this is not me, I guess as chairman, you get caught after every meeting you ever go to in town and get an earful. And good news is I smile and grin and think a lot of neat thoughts in my mind. But, you know, people that have valuable input, that are big hitters that can make things happen if we ever got there, here's things I'm hearing. City council and consultants already know what they want, so this is a waste of time. I'm hearing this. There's several council members that don't even want to do this process, and as soon as they get enough votes, they're going to kill it anyway. And number 3, there's no funding for any of this, so it's a lot of work for no action. And what that's doing, those kind of attitudes are making people that we're going to need, because we are going to get something done. I don't care what happens. We're going to come up with a downtown master plan if we have to get a bottle of wine and sit around somebody's house and crank it out, you know. But the problem is the people that can make that happen. You know, I talked about a gondola. Well, you know, I know somebody in town that gave me one of those complaints that could fund the entire gondola run. But they don't even want to give their opinion because it's a waste of time anyway. And somehow it's kind of like that stuff being mislabeled. We're going to have to correct that a little bit. We're going to have to start, I think, showing this has happened, and that's why I asked you the other day in our kind of pre-meeting, how many places have you done this? Because this is not, there's nothing new or unique for the consultants that's going on in our town. Little stuff going on with the council members or not getting to the right different minority group. All that stuff happens every time they go somewhere. And they've done this 100 times.
The last thing I will say, just to correct what I'm saying here, is I think the books are appropriate. I think they are about creating a sustainable city that pays for itself and that creates good design and livability for all citizens. So we're talking about equity. We're talking about good design. You know it when you feel it, like in different cities. And I think I read them and I didn't see any kind of bias. It's really just technical information being
But
shared.
how do you convey that message? Because the point is, if someone here, this is liberal propagation, I'm not going to read that stuff.
I will tell you what Oprah Winfrey would say: read a book.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Pick up the book and read it.
But where and how can we get the message out? Is it the website? Is it, I don't know.
But that's you all folks who have read the books, who are in the community, need to kind of tell people, oh, that's not what it is, you know, there are things that you can take away from these books that are still applicable within the context.
I even wonder whether we can have, as on the website, somewhere where there are comments or even, I don't even know how to phrase it yet, but where
Testimonials.
we can say.
Like book reviews?
Someone said, I read the book, that's really helpful, I learned X, Y, Z, almost out of your perspective, share, so it becomes an opportunity for people to learn what someone else has seen through their eyes, and I relate to Mario, I know the guy, he's not a liberal, so yeah, I will go read the book, but he read it. But you understand that the principle behind it is that if we can somehow get the message to the community that they relate to the person who said it, but then urge to read. And maybe after all, that's also okay. So anyway, I appreciate that. It's a very good discussion that we have. And of course, we want to find solutions to what we hear today as well. So you shared your first one, or do you want to share your first one now?
That was.
Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that also. And where was that last time? I think I was somewhere around.
I think you're
the
right.
second one on your list. The third one, I think.
Third
the first
one on
one.
my list.
Yeah.
One of the difficult things in my community is their thought is both plans. Now, I'm speaking of both plans because they're looking at it as a total package. Is that what are they getting for their community now? Because it's not going to be part of our community. You know, they're saying that these plans are for the privileged community and not for our community.
Right.
And that's where the most difficult part is in convincing those that we want to bring all communities together and revitalize our town as a whole and not just part of it. But that is a difficult task.
I want to ask you a question, the word in your heart, do you think that we are doing, or do you think we are doing what people accuse us of doing?
Repeat the first part of that.
So, in your heart, as you feel, this is you share with us what other people, what their perception is.
Right.
In your heart, do you agree with them, and therefore we must find a way to for you to feel more comfortable?
Well-
or is it more that you need some help to tell them, no, this is going to be the direction?
I understand the whole package because I've been looking at the whole package, but they're only getting, you know, well, let me just say this, they don't want the whole package because that's sometimes take reading, research, and etc.
Sure.
So actually, they just want to hear, when we meet, they just want to hear part of it. You know, what's in it for me is basically what they're saying.
Right.
Yeah, you know, they don't look at that as a whole division of the whole city. They want to know what's in it for me because in the past, they have not been part of that process.
Exactly, I understand, and this is important to understand, know that there are people that feel that way.
Yeah.
Now, we know, and I fully believe that through the comprehensive plan, we are addressing everyone's need. And in fact, I have a very big concern about the southern part, but I think there's a big need. I mean, you think, how can we address the need there appropriately for their communities?
Yeah, but their thought is, you're gonna have to show that to me. You know, you just can't tell me what you're gonna do. You gotta show me. And I mean, and that's part of, they've been told before what was going to be happening to their community, how we're gonna help the community, we're gonna revitalize it. And it became stagnant.
Right,
It
so
didn't
that
happen.
the execution of it never happened, and
Never
everyone was
happened.
skeptic
Yeah.
about the plan.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's a hard one because of experience in the past. How to overcome that, I don't know. You know, it's anybody's hand, but once you do it.
Right, you just gotta keep pounding it into them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your, the second on your list, Amelia.
I have some things on here about, that are all loosely related to community engagement, and making sure that we attract, a broad swath of the community. And so, I mean, I feel like that's a re-emerging theme this whole time during this whole meeting. So the one I'll give you is, concerns about implementation and accountability, which I think also goes hand in hand with what Miles was saying about addressing misinformation. But that's something that I hear from people rather frequently. Beyond the ones that were already mentioned, were okay, let's say best case scenario, we get this great plan and we get community input. We had a plan, 25 years ago, and what happened with that? Nothing, right? And so for people who knew that there was a plan going on back then, they feel kind of like burned by it.
It's exactly what Roy was
Yes.
talking about. Yeah. Go to the next one. That's kind of the same. I'd like to go to the next one.
Okay, so then this is a little bit more particular, but in terms of the community engagement piece of the process, one of the things that I've been a little bit concerned about is the heavy use of online surveys, and then what public events are going to be chosen to make sure that you are attracting different community groups, right? Because if you say you pick 2 public events that are maybe like downtown public events that attract the same kind of people, then you're not actually getting diverse engagement.
Now, I know that our public meeting next week, Thursday, is at the new school.
Yes, and so also this is in your packet as well, and this is just a brief look at this week and next week. But yeah, our meeting, our big public meeting next week on August 25th is at the new NISD CTE building, and then we have some other stuff planned. A lot of the stuff happens at the rec center, but like you mentioned, for our big public events, one of them we picked out is downtown at Art Fest, because it kind of gets some of our art community, downtown community. Another one is Dia de los Muertos, that our public library helps with and plans, and we have a booth already reserved for that, because that's a community we don't hear from a lot, and so we were told by several people, like, we need to be at that event. And then there are other ones, like we've signed up for SFA's Health and Wellness Fair, because they're looking at community wellness, and while it's not an official DTJ won't be there, but we have staff members and if any committee members want to come. So if there are other smaller events that we need to get to, and if our consultants can't be here, staff can give you all the handouts, the pins, make sure you have your t-shirt, and we can give you all the stuff to go to these events if it's something that either I can't be at, Francois can't be at, but we can add additional ones to that.
You guys are ambassadors
Yeah.
of the.
I will say though, I was in a meeting with Jessica the other day, and from that meeting came at least 3 meetings in a box
Yeah.
in hard to reach communities. One's happening today, and then 2 more will be scheduled.
Oh, fantastic.
Mario got invited to be the facilitator for I think all
So
of
that
them.
synergy is there, it's just really showing up and making those connections.
Thank you, Amelia. Next one, Vanessa.
I think it's something that it was already mentioned by Suzanne about the concern of thinking about the future generation, thinking about even my kids and thinking about downtown. And I can tell you how many times I have said as a mom, I am going to take my kids to downtown. Why? Because even if I go to the store, antique store, I'm gonna be chasing a kid and I'm gonna be scared to death they're gonna touch something and break something.
Yeah.
There's nothing for them other than eating, maybe a couple of restaurants. So, and then thinking from the education side too, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of things that we can take excursions in the schools and things for them to learn the rich history that is in town. Yet again, it is not suitable for even taking just students. What are they gonna get to see? Yes, they get to see a lot, but it's just thinking about, them and even make them proud. Because if I'm not taking even my kids, which are the future generation of the town, they are not gonna start having that love and appreciation for.
Your concern is to install an appreciation for things in the children so that when they grow up, they will care about it.
Yes, but if there's nothing for them there, you would not love what you don't have. You don't.
In fact, actually, this is very interesting because in Owensboro, Kentucky, it was again a community that was kind of isolated. It wasn't close to the metro area, similar to Nalchas, and they hadn't really seen any downtown development, and they ended up having this destination
design with us as a team.
That's
By the
just
way, that visioning exercise, the way we're going to do that is we're going to, for 2 days, spend time, and we're going to find a place like this as our studio, like in an architecture a business, and we're going to have maps, and we're going to have pens, and we're going to draw, and you all will participate as much as you want to. And it's such a good point that you make, so I appreciate that, Everton. Thank you. That's it.
Just trying to do something downtown. The buildings, if you tried to do something, you know, you've got asbestos, the sewer, I mean, those are all issues, but it stops some of the creative outlets that are, I can't come up with what I'm trying to get to.
I think your concern is that there's so many hindrances for anyone to even think, well, there's a possibility for me to do something there and I can be successful, because it seems that's a daunting task.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking
Yes. And then with Roy's comment, you know, what are we gonna do for their community? I think that's what downtown, you know, I don't know what the big master plan is. It is hard to get to each community as the master plan, but downtown, we can really focus on bringing all,
Everyone.
you know, it's not ideal, but it's a big start to get all the different groups,
Absolutely.
something for downtown.
Well, I want to share with you something that I have observed. In the city of Dallas, I mentioned that beautiful park that they've done they call it the Clyde Warren Park. Have you heard about it? If ever you go to Dallas, go to Clyde Warren Park. It's actually where the Will Rogers Highway separates downtown from uptown, and then the road is you know, fairly low, and there were bridges across to connect. Then someone had the brilliant idea, put a deck over it, and made it a park.
But they were first laughed out of the room.
Oh yeah.
Because they said,
Yeah.
it's gonna take that, it's gonna cost.
But people had the vision to stay with it. Now what happened then, the idea was to connect downtown with uptown. But what it did, it actually connected the entire city from the south to the north, and there's a big divide, but everyone comes to that park. And the reason for two reasons. The activities that they have there are for every demographic. There's a water spray park. If I don't have money to spend on entertainment, my child can play in that.
Yes.
There are food trucks. If I cannot afford a nice restaurant, I can get something there. The park itself includes a very high-end restaurant with windows, where people with their very nice clothes after going to opera, before going to opera, will go and dine there. They observe the children that plays in the water. It's not their demographic, but they observe it. And suddenly, they interact. I can tell you about the dog park. I can talk about this, even the outside library. And then they program it from 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. It's programmed. I observe that as being the most democratic park I've ever seen. It's democratic because everyone is allowed, everyone can participate, and you actually interact with each other. I think that is what we want to try to achieve for downtown, even for Nacogdoches. That people come there, like you just said, it's a place for everyone.
Right.
But how you do it, we want to help design ideas and come up with ideas to actually achieve that. Thanks for mentioning. Miles.
Not gonna forget me again, huh?
Move back
You
up
know,
here.
just as we are going to put effort into getting to untapped populations, I think we have to go the other way too. And when I first came here as an adult, I'm not a Ben, by the way. My dad was, but I'm not. And I had a friend of mine, after being very involved in town and being engaged, came to me and said, "You're the first guy I've ever seen, you know, be able to come to town and you know, kind of become one of the, you know, kind of Bens." And I said, "Well, bad news for you then, because I'm not." There are deal makers and deal breakers in this town, and they're not coming to anything that we've talked about. They're not going to answer a survey. They're not going to come to any public meeting. We're going to have to go to a few of those. We're going to have to identify those, because there are people in this town that can make things happen and can keep things from happening.
What comes to mind? Events or tools or avenues to reach them?
I think there's only one, and that's they're sought out specifically. And it's a one-on-one meeting, and it's because we know you're important to the future of this town.
Now that was you know, if I think about it, Jessica, when we say the interviews need to be the movers and shakers, and that's the movers and shakers.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that we get those names from.
And it's changed over the last, I mean, they're used, I used to could give you the list of 7 or 8 of them, and if you didn't have their blessings, you're just toast, period.
That's kind of
I know that I remember one time, you know, school bond election,
Oh,
about
don't
4 or
we
5 or
all?
6 or 7, you know, the first time we passed a big one, and I chaired that. And I remember vote on Saturday, and Saturday morning I'm having my cup of coffee, and out comes my wife, and she has the phone, and she goes, "Peggy Wright's on the phone." I spit my coffee out, and all. I mean, I'm one of the biggest property owners in town, and it's vote day, and I'm about to get chewed alive. And she said, "Miles, I just voted for the bond election, and I think what you got out there is good stuff." And you take a deep breath, but there was an identifiable set of people that if they weren't for it, it wasn't gonna happen. And I think that's still there some, and we gotta make sure we get to those people too. They're no more important or no less important, they are equitably important.
Absolutely, and
They're the
please,
big sticks.
please let us know about those names. Share that, Stan.
Well, ask Betty, she's got them all in her Rolodex.
Betty's one of them.
You have to keep them, you have to update.
Laura, next on your list.
Oh. I didn't have,
Okay, no, fine, so you go, we can skip you next.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. If someone comes to mind, please share. And Betty.
I've been asked, how is the I-69 going to affect downtown,
Mhm.
one way or the other? And of course, we have a separate group, I guess, working on that, so, but they're interested in that downtown.
Do you know what is the concern that people have? What do they express as being their concern?
Being left out.
So the downtown will be dropped for, now 69 becomes the bright.
Well, we have 2 towns just south of us that literally lost their downtown when the Interstate 59, Highway 659 skirted the 2 towns. So they have that feeling, so it's natural that people in Nacogdoches feel that way.
Exactly.
And I think that's one thing we probably should address sooner rather than later, because that's on the tip of their mind.
And the good thing is that it's actually part of our process that we are going to look at I-69.
I understand.
And we may not have an answer right now, but we will later on in the process.
Well, I know, but I think the sooner we can address some of those things, the better. I would not suggest leaving it to the end.
Right.
That makes sense.
Because some of us have been going to I-69 meetings for 20+ years, at least, isn't that right? I think the first one was the year I was president of the chamber, and I'm thinking, we've been meeting every year, and it's been routed all over East Texas, but now it's here. So how is that really going to affect us? And I think the business community is concerned about
I
that.
can imagine that, especially the downtown business community is very concerned.
We don't want to be left out.
But I think it's kind of like a false dichotomy that, like a lot of businesses that will go to I-69 would never come to downtown. Trying to find what is downtown's value proposition, because it's walkable, the other big street, you have the authenticity, it's trying to find the right kind of businesses and uses that are a good fit for downtown. They would necessarily, those businesses wouldn't necessarily thrive on I-69. So I think they can be complementary, but not competitive.
I think so. I think it's a matter of how we're going to handle information on I-69. That's going to be very important.
And hopefully that shows that we are already thinking about it, it's maybe not on paper yet.
I think people are thinking about it, yes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Betty. John, next one on your list.
Don't have any.
Good, no problem. No, but if someone comes to mind, share, please, Mario.
Your Dallas example and Miles' comment made me think, because mine was politicization of the process. What you're describing is kind of autocratic thinking, and how do we move this process from that autocratic thinking to a more democratic,
Yeah,
to where it's more equitable for everyone?
exactly.
And so we'll go back and call them influencers, but I'm seeing it as a little autocracy.
It is, but sometimes you have to play the game, otherwise you lose out. And I think you talk about playing the game.
And
Maybe
then
that
kind
would be
of show them all what's in it for them, how it benefits them also.
Yeah. That may, exactly. Anything else? on your
That was
list?
it, just setting that.
So, Roy, anything else on your list?
Just as a note, I have worked with myself a note that, getting, communities involved, not only they being able to go to my community,
because then we can learn about different viewpoints, and I think that's important that you point out. Thank you. Yes, John.
I do have something.
Yes.
Talking about I-69. I-69 will be determined by TxDOT and market forces. There's virtually nothing we can do about what happens along it.
But you can zone it or have
And
regulations.
infrastructure, I mean, water, sewer, roads.
But zoning is not going to differentiate between one type of business and another or anything else. It will be market forces. So zoning cannot change it.
But the city could incentivize to other means, whether it's the ADA agreements.
Well,
the-
incentivizing is going back to market forces. You dangle something out there so that they will wish to do it. Economic development is very simple. You want other people's money.
All of it.
Yeah, you want them to spend it, you want them to invest it. You cannot alter economic forces in any significant way because they are a representation of human nature, which is the ruling thing that we all deal with. What we can do is offer another choice. And that's going to require an understanding of what other people want, other people being not here. So providing what we want is one thing. It's nice and it needs to be a part of it. But we've got to provide what other people want.
Absolutely, understand what other people want and learn what
Yeah,
other people want.
and that
Absolutely.
requires knowing them,
Exactly.
going to see them.
Yeah.
Mario is our best leader in going out and seeing other places and truly observing them.
Right.
This is the basic thing. Therefore, substance is what we've got to concentrate on as much or more so than process, because process is concerned with what we want.
And it's also.
Well, no, I
We
would
want-
also say process is also.
We want the results of what other people
No,
want
and
also.
our process includes reaching out to others to ask them what they want. So it's not only what we want, I would
No,
say.
I'm talking about people who live a day's drive from here in a
So
circle.
it's visitors and tourists, and how do
Yeah.
you,
That's the
I
other
see
group
what you're saying.
and what they will be
I
promoting.
understand what you're saying.
And
yeah.
we can promote it to a certain extent, but it has to be done by the individuals.
I think there's also an element.
Roy's discussion of people, wanting something done, but it doesn't mean opportunity to do something. Or the seedbed or the zoning or whatever aspect of it is we're talking about. To do it, it's the opportunity, but the opportunity can be provided, other people have got to do it.
That's the reason
There's
we
an
created
interesting
that plan.
example of that here, that if you would take some time with me at another time,
Love to hear.
I'd be delighted to
Let's do that,
fill you
John.
in, because it says all of that and it's encapsulated.
In a nutshell, I'd love to hear that. Thank you, John. And we're already out of time. Are there anyone that would like to share something that's still being important on their list, or that they want to share before we close?
Laura
Let-
tried to
let-
say something.
Yeah, Joanne,
Well,
yes.
yeah, just a brief comment that I think as a committee and, consultants, maybe we need to start thinking of how to educate people of what they do want. A lot of people truly don't know. And, so I think to sort of piggybacking on what a lot of people have alluded to, that there can be a lot of opinions, but for those opinions to be valuable to us and them, that there needs to be substance, like John was
Yeah.
saying, and
I would like to have a copy of people's note cards. Is that possible? The copies of your note cards. I want to, Betty, would you mind sharing your card with your notes?
you want my card?
Yes, we want to collect that, so we have it all together. If you don't mind, I appreciate that.
And one thing I do want to mention about these concerns, I know we kind of went over some things y'all have heard. If y'all hear concerns about, like, something got brought up yesterday, there was something on the survey that it was on the technical side that wasn't working, and people were saying, oh, the survey's bad because it doesn't work. If there's technical issues, things like that, y'all please tell me, and we can fix stuff like that. If there's concerns we need to discuss, let me know, because you know, we can't fix some of these things if we don't hear about them. So please continue to pass those on.
Any last minute thought that comes to mind that needs to share, or are you okay with, we'll take the cards and we'll report that? If not, I will put it around and just ask, you know, but I always do, just summarize your experience today, just in one word.
Wait.
Sorry.
Sir, I wanted to do one more thing before we left today. So I know some of y'all participated in kind of our meeting in a box subcommittee that I emailed everybody to see who could attend, and a few of y'all did. There was 2 different things that came out of that meeting in a box subcommittee. It was to look at meeting in a box and how we do some of this outreach and kind of the technical side of things. There wasn't exactly consensus in that group, so I was hoping to get some opinions from this larger group. One faction wanted to look at every single survey, edit the questions, do kind of an audit, do another subcommittee meeting, audit again, and then send all the questions back to DTJ before any surveys are released. I would say the majority of the rest of the group wanted to have city staff look at our surveys that are gonna go out for like grammatical mistakes, things like that. Email it to our larger committee, give y'all 2 or 3 days like we did with this last one, to give some feedback on if you like the survey, and then we kind of move forward. So I was hoping for some sort of direction on which one of those 2 approaches y'all would like to do. Just so that way we're making a decision as a bigger group and not just a subcommittee deciding on what the whole group's gonna do. Mario?
Can I say something in that meeting?
Sure, absolutely.
I think the process that you used, where you sent it out, gave us 2 to 3 days to send you our feedback, I think that worked. It was appropriate, it was efficient, and our voice was heard.
And I would agree. I was in the meetings with Mario, and I would agree. I mean, it does give us a chance if there's a question missing or a box that needs to be added, we got a chance to put that back. And the only thing I would add to that is, at the end of the day, I might have a suggestion. If you see the survey come out and your suggestion's not on there, you gotta kind of trust the process that the consultants have done this hundreds of times, and there may be a reason they didn't use that specific thing. But I don't want to slow the process down anymore. We've already slowed the process down too much, probably.
Do you all agree with what Mario just proposed? Do you all agree with that? You okay with that? Wonderful. So the thought that and I'll miss you out again, I'll start again, but I'll end with you. Some of the encapsulate the summary for you experienced today, the meeting.
In one word.
Clarifying concepts.
Clarifying concept, or just be clarifying, it's clarifying process. Now we summarize today's meeting. How do you summarize that, John?
We're beginning to discuss some substance. We haven't gotten down to the physical aspect of it.
Starts off substance discussion.
Effective and fair.
Effective and fair, like it. Right.
I'd like to process more and being there for now going into the community and deliver that process to them and make them understand it as well as I do. Because, you know, I'm familiar with it more because I'm part of the process, but they are not.
So the delivery has started. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Encourage.
Encourage. Evelyn. Strategic.
I just thought it was a better meeting than, but I haven't been to a lot of them recently.
Any last thing that you want to share, Sam? No? And last word, Miles?
Trust the process and preach it. That's our jobs. I mean, we signed on to do this. We take the ride. Good news. There's a finite ending to it. We'll be through by, spring sometime. It's not a lifetime commitment. But I think we have a responsibility as committee members. A lot of the things that we talked about in this community, we need to start letting people know that their concerns are going to be heard and they are going to be addressed, and that the process will include everyone.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So I'm going to give over to you or to...
Yes, and one thing I want to point out in your packet before everybody runs off is a schedule of our next couple meetings. Most of it's today and then next week. Everything highlighted in yellow is stuff y'all are invited to and encouraged to attend. The big thing is Thursday, August 25th from 6 to 7:30 is our first big public meeting. That's over at NISD's new CTE building, which is right off Maroney, across from Maroney Park. We're gonna have a big community visioning session where people can come and share their general ideas, thoughts, what they want, what they don't want. We are gonna have some children's activities, little busy bags, including these little pop-it keychains that I've been playing with the whole day. So we're gonna have things like that, and so I encourage y'all to come to that, bring your friends, share it. There will be an ad in the newspaper this week. We're doing some radio ads, some TV stuff, and so if you see those social media graphics, please share them, send out the invitations, and then we'll have more details on our 2-day September event on the website, and then will be emailed out to y'all very soon.
In fact, there was a little bit about that over here.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend the time now going through this in detail, but just make sure that the 20th and 21st, you are keeping out as being part of that design charrette. And basically, during the day, we will walk the downtown, we will do a design charrette, we will all work together and draw. The evening, there will be a public meeting, that's on September 20. We will have a parallel to that virtual engagement. September 21, they will be between 9 and 3, there will be, again, the design workshop or charrette, and then again, in-person meeting late that afternoon to share the results of it, two-day event.
Hey, look around the room too, and reach out if you know committee members that weren't here, and let's encourage. We've got some that have been to one meeting, and you know, at some point in time, if one of them actually complained about not having input, and I was like, well, you got to come to the meetings to have input. But if you know these folks, reach out to them and get them to come.